Good morning, Samford, and welcome to Convocation. Today, our convocation is part of the regular series sponsored by the Mann Center for Ethics and Leadership called For the Good, and it provides an opportunity for me to interview some individuals who are acting for the good in every aspect of their lives. And our special guest this morning is Dr. Cecelia Walker, and she's going to tell us a bit about herself as we get into this interview. Dr. Walker, welcome, and thank you for spending this time with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, and it is a beautiful fall day here in Birmingham, and I want you to know how much we appreciate you and the association with you. And I want to get right into the questions, all right?
Okay.
First, would you please tell us about the position that you now hold and a little bit about your own background, including your early influences and maybe some of the things that were important factors in your early life?
Okay. I'm the Executive Director of Chaplaincy and Clinical Pastoral Education for Brookwood Baptist Health. And what I do on a daily basis is run the chaplaincy departments throughout our system, the chaplains that go to each of the patients to visit the patients. I'm their direct report, and they report to me. I also am the director over clinical pastoral education. Every chaplain that is going to be a professional chaplain has to have something called CPE. And it's our process of training chaplains how to be present with patients and families, especially in times of crisis, but not only in times of crisis. A lot of denominations require it of their persons, their ministers, to be ordained. And we have the oldest program in the state of Alabama. And we're the oldest program, too, of training CPE educators. My training was with Baptist Health System. I had 2 years of residency there, and so I'm really proud of that. And my training as an educator was also in the Baptist system. So,
what about your own calling to chaplaincy, and when did you first begin to understand that this was the thing for you?
Well, it was a roundabout way. All of my life, I'm a fourth-generation Baptist. So all of my life, I've been told that women are not ministers, women can't be ministers. So I was working as a librarian for 18 years. I worked for Birmingham Public Library, and I was happy with that because I've always loved books, always loved reading, and was fine because I just didn't think that that was an option for me. But then I started feeling this call and this tug from the Lord to ministry, and not just to become a minister, but to be trained. And the only accredited place in the city of Birmingham was Beeson Divinity. And I was a full-time mom, full-time working, and just didn't see how that was going to work because Beeson only offers classes during the day. But the call was so strong. I'm calling you into ministry, and I want you trained. So I came over and interviewed at Beeson, didn't think that I would get accepted, but I did. And then I didn't think that my supervisor would say that I could be off every day during the day and work every night and weekend so that I could come to Beeson, but she did. But I enjoyed my time at Beeson, loved it here. But then toward the end, I still didn't know what I was going to do. And I'm like, Lord, you've called me to do this. I need a place or a spot. But I started remembering two really sad times in my life. One when my father died at Cooper Green Hospital for indigent persons, and he didn't have a chaplain. We didn't have a chaplain there with us. And it was a really hard place, and we had to deal with some things that nobody should have to deal with when they've lost their loved one. My husband, Jeffrey, died the week after our 5th anniversary, and he was at St. Vincent's Hospital. And a chaplain was with us, and he walked us through it and helped me to be with Jeffrey, and I didn't even want to go see him, but he said, I'll be with you, I'll be with your mom, and you really need to be able to say goodbye. And it was as if Jeffrey was in the bed sleeping, and I was able to say goodbye in a very dignified way, which was contrary to what I had experienced with my dad. So when I'm getting to the end of my time at Beeson, my last semester, I started wondering about chaplaincy. It had been in the back of my mind that that might be something I'm good at, because I was always offering counsel to people and supporting people and loving on people. That was something I enjoyed doing. And so I called the chaplain at St. Vincent's, and he talked me through what I needed to do next, my next steps.
You know, you mentioned especially chaplains being there at crucial times with families. I have seen that in my own life. I remember when my father died when I was a very young man, and the chaplain in that hospital got to me immediately and ministered directly to me. You know, you never forget those people who are put there in your life at certain times. But for those who are engaged in that kind of ministry, there's not an off switch that you can just toggle and forget about that and go home and get on with your normal lives. How do you deal with going from providing that kind of comfort to a very hurting family, and then getting on with the rest of your life in something that's like a normal fashion?
Well, we support, on our team, we support each other. And so sometimes it is so hard, the days are so hard, that we'll need to sit down and talk to each other and share what that day has been like, because everything is so private. You can't really go home and even talk to your spouse or family about it. And so that's one way I start, just acknowledging that it was really hard and it was really painful, and that it brought up some painful things. I also have a relationship with a therapist, and when things get really hard and get really turned up in that way, I can always call her. Strong relationship with my pastor, and prayer is really essential, to have a strong prayer life, and I try to cultivate that. And then other times I just need to veg out. I remember when I first started doing that, Gabrielle, my daughter, would come home and she would see me in the dark drinking this fruit drink that I liked. And she said, it was a rough day, wasn't it? And so sometimes I just like to do that and watch a movie that's just funny, and just to bring myself back down so that I can cope with the things that I have to do in my family.
Yeah, I think it's a gift to be able to do that. And it's also wonderful that God has put people in your path to help you with all of that. And I'll have to say, I love the way that you so easily manage to say, I have a therapist friend who helps me. Isn't that a mark of coming to grips with the challenges that we have in life? To say, I've got a therapist friend who can help me.
Yeah, and that was a really big growing edge for me, because when I was a CPE resident, I thought it was a sign of weakness. And even in our community, in the African American community, it is not really embraced to go to a therapist. But when I started doing that work, I just started going to therapy, and then I had a loss of Gabrielle, and she was there for me every week, and I found the value in that. And so now it's an essential part of my maintaining balance in my life.
And you've learned that it's a sign of strength to say, I need some help here.
I need some help.
Yeah.
And I found that it's really arrogant on my part for me to invite people to come to me for help, and me to be resistant to reach out for some help.
That is so well said. It is. You've already begun to talk about some of the personal pain that you've experienced. Our students who are watching this are not familiar with all of that about your life, but would you talk about some elements of that personal pain for a few minutes?
The first big situation was my husband, Jeffrey, as I alluded to. He died the week after our 5th anniversary, and we had a son, Jeffrey, who was only a year old at the time. And he wasn't down sick or anything. He had been just feeling like he had the flu for a week, and then suddenly he was gone. And that really brought into my focus how quick things can change and how you can just be moving along and happy, and then life just comes crashing at you. But I had Jeffrey, little Jeffrey, that was really helpful because I could put my energy into taking care of him and loving on him and raising him. And then I remarried, and I had Gabrielle, and she was in an automobile accident. And I was at work at UAB Hospital at the time, and she was brought into that hospital. And even though she was 14 and should have gone to Children's, God allowed it, I believe, for her to be there because I was able to see her eyes open that last time. She was able to know that I was there with her. But it was a really, really painful experience. But what I had already learned from Jeffrey was to make the most of every second. And so I have grief issues, but no guilt issues. And I was able to just love her constantly, and we had such a deep relationship. Last year, my son, Jeffrey, died suddenly. And that morning, I had done a recording for the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship talking about what I do in my life. And then 30 minutes later, I get this call about my son. But God's faithfulness, and people just surrounded me with love and care. And the same kind of love that I try to give to other people, I was the recipient of. And I've learned to be graceful and gracious in taking it. I used to want to be so strong. With Jeffrey, I sort of closed myself off, and it was just me and little Jeffrey against the world. But as I grew and developed in my pastoral identity, I learned that it's okay to let people love on me and support me. And I believe that that's how God has helped me to get through this.
I feel the same way, and I think that you alluded to it. I'll say it a little bit more directly. I think that what you experienced during some of these times was an outpouring from friends who have been the great beneficiaries of your love and care for them over the years. And so it is a good illustration of if you will put yourself out to someone else when they're in trouble, much of that does come back to you, because we know that trouble comes for us, regardless of our circumstances.
Exactly, yes. And I did learn that and isn't it interesting that what you have given to someone else, it might not be the same thing that you need back, but it's amazing how God does what he does. When Gabrielle was alive, funds were very, very tight. And I had no idea. I wasn't expecting her to die. I really didn't have insurance. I wasn't ready for this. But every day, the mailbox was filled with cards with money, and people just kept sending it. And when everything was paid, then it stopped coming. And I was like, look at the Lord, providing for my needs in that way. That was a way of him showing himself faithful, because I was pretty upset with him at that time.
I understand.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the really significant people in your life who served maybe as mentors or friends. What, if you'd name 2 or 3 of those, and then maybe what you learned from them?
I have to start with my grandfather. And my grandfather died when I was 5 years old. But I remember distinctly sitting at his feet, him reading scripture to me and praying with me and telling me that I was going to do great things for God. And I had, of course, no idea what that meant. But all of my uncles and both of my grandfathers were Baptist ministers. And I thought that was just nothing better than being a pastor's wife. I was like, if I can't be a preacher, then I can be a pastor's wife. So I thought that was going to happen. And then as I continued to grow, the pastors at the church, the missionary society ladies at the church, all just seemed to value me. I would go and hang out at the missionary women's houses. I mean, just plop down and visit them, and they would let me do that. And I have always been sort of an old kind of soul, and I just enjoyed being with them. But as I continued to go through school, I had teachers, especially Mr. Anderson, who was our choir director, people just kept seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself. Because I'm pretty quiet and usually pretty shy, and I like to stay behind the scenes, but they were always pulling me out and feeling like there was some leadership capability there that I didn't see. And he was one of the first people to just put me out front and tell me that I could do it and encourage me to do things, just to try. And then Norfleet Day, she was a librarian when I was at the library, and then I get to Beeson and she's here, and she's been a mentor for me. And again, just seeing potential where I didn't see that potential. My CPE educators have been that, always pushing me and stretching me in ways that I didn't necessarily like at the time, but now that I look back on it, I have a strong family. My mother, my father, my entire family has been a really strong family, and my siblings, we all live here in Birmingham, and we're very supportive of each other. So I have a little village.
You do. It's a big village. I think that you're one of the most encouraging people that I've ever known. And I just wonder, as I see that trait in people, and you especially, I wonder, do you think that you developed that as a child, or is that something that you've come into as you've gotten older?
I think I developed it as a child, or I admired it in the ladies that I was around, my grandmothers. I admired how they were always so just intuitive about people's needs. And even the neighborhood that I grew up in, if something happened in somebody's family, how people just showed up and helped in whatever ways they had. And they might not have had a lot to offer, but whatever they had was available. And I thought that that was just such an awesome way to be. And so I think that's where that came from.
Talk with us a bit about how you stay fresh in terms of the things that you're reading or passing along or listening to. We're all looking for those avenues for enrichment in our lives that way. Talk with us about a few of those things in your own life.
Well, I love music, especially. From when I wake up first thing in the morning after praying, Alexa, play, and I want to hear music all the time. My favorite song, my theme song, I've shared with you, is "Order My Steps."
And it's your ringtone,
yes,
right?
It's my ringtone too, yes. And I listen to it all the time, just asking God to order my steps and to direct my speech and what I do. So I really love music. I love movies. And I'm always, but I like funny movies and love stories. Life is scary enough. I don't like scary movies. I don't like anything violent. I just want to things that make me feel good and make me laugh. I really like something that'll make me laugh. And I love to read. Right now, I'm always reading several things at a time. I'm reading a book called I See You. And it's talking about how we can miss homeless persons and we look straight through them. And it's really challenged me. It's by a guy named Terrence Lester, and he lives in Atlanta and works with the homeless, and how we can just pass by people. And it's challenged me to pay more attention to the humanity in people. And so I really love that. I'm a Dr. Martin Luther King fan. And so on my desk is always a book that is connected to him, because I just like to read about, the power of love. And so the one that I keep usually is The Strength to Love on my desk, reading about that and the challenge of saying one thing and living life differently than what you say.
Yeah. Consistency is kind of important, isn't it? You've heard us talk a lot around here about the significance of just what I usually call that balance between confidence and humility. And years ago when I started talking about this, I was talking about just the humility part of it, because I don't seem to have a problem with the confidence. It was the humility that was plaguing me. And then I began to realize that there are a lot of people who really struggle with the confidence aspect of things. But I always say that it's enough confidence to get out of bed in the morning, to do what you're called to do, but enough humility to understand your place within God's created universe and the needs around you and your own brokenness, those things. But it takes both. They're kind of held in tension. How does that work in your own life? Because you're both of those. You are a confident person, but you clearly have humility as you approach your work. How does that work for you?
Yeah, I look to the scriptures. 1 Thessalonians 5:24 is like my theme scripture for ministry. The one who called you is faithful, and he will do it. And and then the one in 2 Peter that says that he has given me everything for life and godliness, and those just tangential to me. And so I know that God is in control of this, and that this is his ministry. And so that's how I go through the day, that he's given me what I need, and if he places it in my heart to speak or to do, that he's going to give me the strength to do it. And I quit relying on myself so much, because when I feel like I have to do it, and so opportunities that have even come to me, even the one at Baptist and all of the other opportunities since God has called me into ministry, I've never sought it. He's opened that door. And so that's the way that it builds my confidence that he in fact did call me, even though many people said that he didn't call women, and even told me I wasn't called because I was a woman. But he's shown himself faithful, and he's done it. And so I just keep walking in that path that he's opening.
And I would imagine that you were also called to ministry even when you were a librarian.
Yes, I was. And people would come in and I would pray with them. They would come and share their stories. And I was still resisting that because I still had that tape in my ear. But now that I look back, I remember all of those times. And I remember the first sermon, actually, I was in Vacation Bible School. And I was a little girl, and Reverend Smith asked me, would I do the closing service? And I could not believe it. And I was so excited, though. And preached about the woman at the well and just had a ball at that. But, you know.
How long did that sermon last, by the way?
15 minutes. Yeah. But for like a 12-year-old, it was, yeah. It was exciting.
Well, speaking of opportunities, your most recent opportunity is to serve as a Samford trustee. You were just elected a few months ago. Speak with us about that, and also your hopes for Samford.
Well, that was such an exciting day when you called, because I wasn't expecting it. It wasn't on my radar. As you know, I was on the board of overseers, and I was excited to be serving in that capacity. But one day, my husband and I were driving down Lakeshore, and I looked up at Samford. It was before I was on the board of overseers, and I said, I want to be on the board of trustees at Samford so I can have an impact in the community with Samford and connect them maybe to some of the really brilliant, people that I know in the inner city. And then I got a call about the board of overseers, so I thought, well, that's what God wants me to do, and that I was so happy doing that. But when you called, I thought this is an opportunity for me to be at the table, to have a voice, to introduce this school to some of the people, the gifts that I know that are in the community that are even afraid to come to Samford because they don't think they can handle it, even though they're very smart. And I think that it's going to be a great blend. I'm excited about just serving a school that has given me so much, because it's opened doors for me that I would never have believed that I could walk through. As soon as I say that I'm a Beeson graduate, that gives me some, brownie points right there.
It does.
Yeah.
And my guess is that you would have walked right through those doors anyway. But it's nice that Samford has the association with
Yeah.
you. And let me just say on behalf of everyone associated with Samford, how proud we are that you are a trustee here and how grateful we are for the relationship that so many of us have with you. You truly are an inspiration to us. And I appreciate, Dr. Walker, so much you taking the time to be with us today. I'm going to give you the last opportunity here in this session to speak directly to our students. What would you like them to hear at a time when they're coping with tremendous stress, with all of the challenges of COVID, with conducting classes in different ways, and all of the restrictions that we have in place related to protecting their health? What might you say to them today?
As I think about that, I just think about how faithful God is, and that even though this whole situation has rocked our world and caught us off guard, it didn't surprise God, and that He has them, and if they just continue to trust and to reach out and say when they're afraid, to say that they're afraid, find somebody that they can be open and honest with, but just keep trusting that He's going to get us through it, and to be sensible. I work in a hospital, and this is very real, so take care of themselves, stay safe, take the right precautions so that we can get through it together. And we're going to be stronger together. If we do it all together, we'll make it to the other side of it.
You said that beautifully. I'm afraid that I said it this way: don't do stupid stuff. So I like your version of it much better. Samford, thanks for joining us this morning. And again, it's been a pleasure to have Dr. Walker with us. I hope you have a wonderful and safe day. Thank you.